Albie has said that the problem is to understand whether human beings are as they are because they must be or because they want to be. So, this central problem, as he's putting forward, is to understand whether human beings are the type that they are because that's just their nature, their human nature, or because they choose to be that way. He explores this in in George's Fall in the mock boxing match that they have. In this boxing match, it takes place in the garden under the aegis of George's father-in-law, who is referred to as a god. Martha knocks George down with a roundhouse right. Now, in this one, because it's a mock boxing match, he is obviously choosing to fall down because they're play fighting. And the significance of this fall becomes important. As Martha says, and this could be to do with something slightly different as well, I think it's coloured our whole life. It's an excuse anyway. It's what he uses for being bogged down, why he hasn't gone anywhere. So, in a way, Albie isn't criticising man's condition. He is showing that, yes, it is a bit absurd, but it's also no reason for despair, because man is choosing to be this way. This is also shown in the story, in George's story about the boy. He swerves to avoid a porcupine and succeeds only in crashing into a tree. Now remember, one of Albie's huge concerns is this avoidance of reality, and that if you avoid reality, only bad things can happen. So by swerving to avoid the porcupine, the harsh and prickly reality, he crashes into a tree. So you can see the metaphor in that story. So from this passage here, we can see that Albie really possesses a strong view that man falls because he chooses to. And there is possibility that he takes a different choice, and that choice is in not avoiding the prickly reality. Now, we want to talk about over here avant-garde briefly. Let's have a look. Avant-garde. Okay, so avant-garde stands for work such as plays, or it could be art, that are experimental or innovative, particularly with respect to art, culture, and politics. So the passage here suggests that Albie has achieved success on Broadway and off-Broadway with this rather experimental play, which is normally uncommon because Broadway would be considered to be the mainstream. They say that the reason why he is so successful is this masterful blending of comedy and anguish. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is, in fact, extremely witty, and Albie presents humour as an essential element. So, in one way, where are we? Sorry. The function of laughter can be lying in its ability to intimidate by humiliating. And there's little doubt that Albie does indeed use humour essentially as a weapon, as a means of stripping his characters of false dignity and pretension, making fun of them and stripping them bare. But the humour of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf has another function. It is a means of tempering an unpalatable truth. So what that means there is that sometimes truths are hard to swallow. So we make a joke about something, but we're making a serious comment at the same time. But the humour is meant to soften it. Okay, so there's a serious message, but the humour softens that. Also, in New Carthage, laughter is also as much a retreat as sex or liquor. The young boy who had killed his parents retreats into manic laughter while Honey hides her fear behind a simulated amusement. So when characters are kind of freaking out, they laugh or they try and respond to the humorous element rather than the serious element. And the audience, likewise, is also coerced or forced into sharing this form of escapism. They might be very, very uncomfortable with what's happening on stage, just as the boy was when he killed his parents, or Honey in being in this awkward dinner meeting or whatever it is that they're having. So the audience, due to their nervousness and their uncomfortableness, will be inclined to try to laugh it off. And, they're encouraged to share this escapism. But same with George and Martha, this is just a temporary exhilaration. Afterwards, of course, they realise the bitter reality that's masked by the humour. So they spend the majority of the play making fun of each other, but by the end of the play, a serious truth is unveiled. And this is also Albie's declared intention for the audience, to corrupt the audience in the direction of the good. So humour becomes, a sugar coating and a chief active ingredient of the pill, which is what they're trying to say there, is humour is his way of captivating the audience, but also embedding within them a serious truth. Now, we've already talked a lot about that truth being the risks of avoiding or escaping reality. Now, in this passage here, they talk about how they wanted to do the mise-en-scène, the setting for the play. The play's Broadway director, Alan Schneider, said that Albie wanted the image of a womb or a cave, some kind of confinement, and they never thought of it as being realistic, a literal view of life in 1964. But to Albie, if the play was to be called realistic, it was necessary to redefine the term to mean that drama which faces man's condition as it is. So by setting it in the common household, we get this sense of realism, and this sense of realism presents man's condition, human life, just the way that it is, to present a certain truth. Now, where are we? Heading on down. Okay. So, to many critics, from the Boston City Censor to the editor of the Toulon Drama Review, the play appeared morbid and pessimistic, while Albie was merely exercising his acknowledged talent for bitter invective. Now let's have a look at that word invective. Oops, too many V's. Insulting, abusing, highly critical language. So what they're trying to say here is that he was trying to get forward, a criticism, a comment about society. Now, the play definitely attacks any kind of fake or false optimism. And then we'll look here at this word myopic. So this is short-sighted. Myopic is short-sighted. So it attacks kind of a fake or short-sighted confidence about modern society. But it is actually in some ways positive in an existential sense. Now let's have a look at that word existential. Okay, so existentialism, again, sort of rejects in many ways the ideas of, life beyond this life. It kind of looks at the way that things are as they are. There's no sort of real greater meaning. We just exist. We are here, we exist. And a lot of people could think of this as morbid, pessimistic, or absurd. But Albie would like to put forward that really his play is a reaffirmation of the possibility of choice and the reality of freedom. As we talked about before, the boy chose to swerve in his car. George chose to take the fall in that mock boxing match. So because we have this possibility of choice, we also have the reality of freedom. So in a way, we've got to see Albie's play, as not being morbid and pessimistic, but in having a look that, yes, the world is the way it is, but we can choose to embrace that. And this leads us down to this little passage here. John Galsworthy, he said this about optimism and pessimism. The optimist appears to be he who cannot bear the world as it is, and is forced by his nature to picture it as it ought to be. And the pessimist, one who cannot only bear the world as it is, but loves it well enough to draw it faithfully. So the first part of this is basically saying an optimist doesn't like how the world is, so they picture it how they hope it would be. But a pessimist can deal with the world how it is, But he appreciates it, and that's why he can speak about it in its true form, even though some people might think that form is dissatisfactory. The true lover of the human race is surely he who can put up with it in all its forms, in vice as well as virtue, in defeat no less than in victory. The true seer, he who sees not only joy but sorrow, the true painter of human life, one who blinks at nothing. It may be that he is also, incidentally, its true benefactor. So we talk about optimists and pessimists, optimists being the ones who see the glass half full, pessimists are seeing the glass half empty. But what Albie and this fellow John Galsworthy is trying to say is that maybe a pessimist actually loves life, not hates life, loves life more than an optimist. And that's because if you truly love somebody, you love them for their negative qualities, their flaws, as well as their strengths. That's real love. Real love is not wishing somebody was better than what they really are, not seeing them how you wish them to be. So the play is not meant to be really morbid. It's meant to suggest that seeing reality as it is, facing reality, is actually having real love for your existence and is actually a positive thing. And that rather than being stuck in an absurd reality, in an absurd world, man is equipped with choice to do as he wishes with his reality. But the first step in doing something about your reality is facing it. So, where many would criticise the play for being morbid and pessimistic, it is meant to be an optimistic message about man's choice to see his world more clearly.